Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and today we're visiting with Tina Wanamaker, author of the newly released book, Characteristics of a Christian Woman, a focus on the characteristics portrayed by a woman following after God. Tina, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're delighted to have you. Tina is a lover of the Lord. She's the wife of Owen and mother of 4 children. Owen and Tina have been married for 17 years and minister for the Lord together on many levels, including hosting a home church, which Owen pastors, marriage discipleship, personal discipleship, teaching at a homeless shelter, and serving the community in a local ministry called Helping Hands for Christ. She ministers to women in the local jail, homeschools for children, speaks at various women retreats, writes books and articles. Her writing is focused on practical discipleship, encouraging women to follow the Lord fully and equipping them to do so. Her first book was released in 2015 and is called Characteristics of a Christian Woman. She hosts a YouTube channel called Words of Life for Women, aimed at encouraging women with real-world advice on living for Christ. Tina, the image of a Christian woman, Proverbs 31, the go-to verse for what we would say is a woman of valor, a woman of respect, a woman of intent. As you were growing up, who defined for you what the characteristics of a Christian woman were?
I would have to say my grandmother and my mother.
Right, and just they were godly women. What was it that they exhibited that was, you went to a friend's house and you met their mom. Did they impress you the way your mom impressed you? Did you see?
Right.
Did you draw? Were you aware of differences, comparisons?
Sure.
Were you processing this in some particular way?
Yes. So my grandmother, she's still alive, and she has always been a lady, very much so. Very highly mannered, I guess you could say. And she consistently has read her Bible. Even now, she's has dementia, and so she's staying in a home for folks with dementia. But when we go to see her, she always has her Bible on her lap. And the kids get to see that when we go in to visit with her. And they get to see her reading the Bible. And it's that example for them. It's a beautiful thing to see. And my mom as well has always been a woman of faith. I actually did not grow up as a believer. We grew up in church, but Owen and I both dedicated our lives to Christ sometime after we were married, about 1.5 years after we were married. And so to see those things growing up and to have that influence was very helpful when it came time for us to begin our walk with Christ.
So it's interesting. You had a Bible reading grandmother, Bible reading mother, yet you would self-define as not growing up in a Christian home, as a believing, practicing, church-going Christian.
Well, and what I mean by that is I would say that I did grow up in a home where God was a big part of it. But I didn't get it personally, if that makes sense. So on a personal level, it wasn't until later in life that Jesus became a reality for me.
And how did that come about?
Well, my husband and I began dating, and were engaged fairly quickly, and got married. And so after we were married, we thought that getting married would make life better, But that's not the case, because then you're living with someone else, and you you see that you're not perfect and they're not perfect. And so it can cause some problems. And at the time, both Owen and I were heavily involved in kind of a party lifestyle, a lifestyle that was not pleasing to the Lord. We had gotten involved in that, early on, I think teenage. And so from there, after we were married, we knew that we were still doing those things, and we knew that we were killing ourselves both spiritually and physically, but we just didn't know what to do about it. So we looked into some areas. We thought, well, maybe we'll try, doing this or doing that. And nothing worked out for us. And so we kind of got to the end of ourselves and realized that we did get to the end of ourselves and realized that there is nothing that we could do. A friend of ours, an acquaintance that we had, she invited us to a church with her. And we thought, well, we've got nothing to lose. We'll go. So we attended this church with her and a few other friends. And the first day, I don't remember what the message was, but at the end, they gave the good news of Jesus Christ, the gospel message. And my husband, Owen, went down and gave his life to Christ, which was very surprising to me given his background as well. And so then for me, it took a few more months because I'm more of a processor. And so it took a few months. I finally came to the place where I realized that it wasn't by good works that I was going to heaven. It was simply the gift of God. There's nothing that we could do to earn that, and that I needed to simply receive it. And so I did that about 3 months after Owen received Christ. And Jesus changed everything for us.
What was the most noticeable change to you?
Golly. Well, we discontinued the lifestyle that we were living. That was probably the most notable change for everyone around us. And I know that everyone saw a change and a difference. We weren't so self-seeking, we were now focused on others and a desire to encourage others and to see ourselves and others grow in Christ. A desire to see others come into relationship with the Lord. And so, all of these things. And at the time, we had a group of friends, and we knew that we couldn't be around those things anymore, the type of lifestyle that we were involved with, because it's a temptation. And so we got together with them and we told them, listen, guys, we love you. We want to remain in relationship with you, but there are some things that we will not be doing any longer, and these are the things that we would not like you to bring to the house anymore. And so in doing that, creating that separation, and I think there were only a handful, maybe two, that we are still in contact with today because of that, because they wanted to continue in that lifestyle.
How did that make you feel from knowing that you were taking a stand and your hope and desire was that they would want to embrace and ask why and what got a hold of you and maybe we need that, but instead they rejected it? How did that feel to you early on in your walk with the Lord?
Well, one of the things that was said to us was, someone said to us, well, this whole religion thing, it's okay, but you guys are taking it too far. You have become too radical with it. And Owen and I both, there had come a point where we knew that we could not be in a place of lukewarmness with Christ, that it's either going to be hot or cold. And, Jesus told the disciples, he said, are you going to leave me too, when some of his disciples were leaving? And they said, Jesus, where are we going to go? You have the words of eternal life. And that's where Owen and I were at. We were like, there's no choice here. And so there was a sense of rejection in having the folks respond in the way that they did. But honestly, we were okay with it because we knew that Jesus was the truth.
Imagine for a minute how many have heard the words, you must count the cost. That you must be willing to leave mother and father and sister and brother, and that you will lose. There are those that will hate you, those that will persecute you, that have read the words but have no concept because they grew up in a church home, they haven't ever had to experience the breaking away from the world. I came to faith at age 44. I broke away from a world that was so different, so radically different that it was difficult. But yet, early on as a Jew, I knew I had to count the cost of possibly losing 14 million relatives. Because when I accepted Jesus, they would think that I was no longer Jewish, therefore they would break away. Fortunately, I did not have that experience. Now, you live in the same town that your parents and your grandmother live in?
Yes.
And you live in the same town that Owen and his parents live in?
Yes, his parents actually just moved back here a few years ago.
Okay. How did they respond? What did they see? I know how we feel about what we went through and what our observations are, but how did the family respond? How did they react to it? What did you sense in them?
Right. Well, Owen's parents, they are they're great folks, and they're not believers, and so he was not raised in anything, and they a few years, well, gosh, it's probably been 8 or 9 years ago. I was having a conversation with his mom, and she said, "I can see it." She said, "I can see that there's something very different, and I acknowledge that." And so she could see it. Both of his parents can see it, and they acknowledge, although they don't acknowledge that it was the Lord. And so when we came to Christ, we kind of got the feeling that, oh, well, it's maybe just a phase, but it's been a 16-year phase, right? So, and my parents were very, I feel like they were more supportive, very supportive. And so, yeah.
When you began to go through the process of introspection, especially in the writing of your first book, what was that process like for you? Because here,
introspection.
Here, your 10, 12, 13 years in the Lord, you're at that age of spiritual maturity where you know how to drive the car, you know how to stay in your own lane, you know how to not get off, don't enter the exit ramp, you know how to keep your distance from using a driving kind of picture from the person next to you. You're on the lookout. You're not really seasoned, but you're excited, you're engaged, you want to know more. What prompted you to write the first book?
So after we came to the Lord and surrendered our lives to Him, chose Him, then we started learning, and we learned pretty quickly that we didn't know what we were doing. And in being Christians, as well as being married and living life in general. And so what we did is we thought, well, let's see if we can find someone to help us. in that place. And the church we were attending, I began asking the Lord, who would be good that could possibly help me and mentor me? And he brought to mind 3 ladies. And so I approached each lady, and I said, would you be interested? Would you be available, willing? And all 3 said no. And then I thought, oh, is it me? But the first one said, the response was that she was too busy.
Okay.
And the second one said that she did not feel equipped to do it. And the third just said no. She had just some things going on in her own life, is what it sounded like. And Owen actually had the same experience. He approached a gentleman and asked for mentorship. And the guy just said, I can't do it. And so in saying that, though, looking back, that introspection again, we both realized that God had a plan in that he didn't want us looking to someone else. He wanted us looking to him. And I think that possibly he knew that we would end up with someone else on the pedestal of our heart instead of him. And so because we didn't have that mentorship, we went straight to him. And we said, well, then, Lord, would you teach us? And I asked him, would you disciple me then, Jesus? And he taught me a lot of things, beginning with marriage. And that's a lot of the things in the book are directly from that time where I was sitting at his feet and asking him, how do I be a wife? What do I do? What characteristics should I have? How do I love my husband, Lord? What does that even look like? Can you show me? And he began to show me. And I began to share those things with other women. And I early on, as the Lord was teaching me, I taught a small study in our home to just a few ladies about what he had been teaching me. From there, I taught it again later when I was in charge of teaching a Bible study, and wrote a Bible study for it, a study guide for it. And when I was teaching that study, I ended up with a bunch of notes. And at the end of that study, I said, well, Lord, is there something else you'd have me do with this? And I felt like he was leading to combine it all. And so I did that, and I ended up with a manuscript. And I thought, well, what do I do with this? It was never my plan to publish a book,
right,
or to do this. But God has a plan. And so he led for me to publish. And I said, Lord, I don't know how to publish. How do you do that? And we used to do nursing home ministry, the kids and I. We did that for about 10 years. We would go in and visit various folks. And there was one lady that was unable to get out of her room. And she had been in her room probably 6 or 7 years. And so we would go into her room and visit with her. And after I was asking the Lord, would you show me what to do? What's the next step in publishing?
right.
Then we went to go visit her. And I looked over on her nightstand there. And there is a book. And it's by someone that we go to church with, the author. And I thought, that couldn't be him. And so I picked it up and I looked at it. And it was this guy that we went to church with. And I thought, that's so odd. And I felt like the Lord was whispering to my heart, ask him. So I said, okay, Lord. So that Sunday, because I hadn't shared with anyone what the Lord was doing except for Owen. Him and I had just been praying about it.
All right.
And so I asked this gentleman, I said, well, hey, I found this book there. And he says, oh, yeah, she still has that? That was from like 10 years ago. And I was like, that's so interesting that it happened to be on her bed table. And anyways, so he says, well, I self-published, but I have something that I think you should look into, and I'll bring it next week. So he brought the information for this hybrid publishing company, and he gave it to me. And so I contacted them. Well, what I didn't realize when I was contacting them was that they were going to call me right back. I thought I was just going to be getting some paperwork, and anyways, ended up being this gal calls me pretty quickly back. And she was such a sweet lady. And the Lord actually allowed an opportunity to minister to her. She was going through a hard time. And so I thought, well, maybe that was it. Maybe it was all just to pray with her. But it wasn't. And so the Lord kept leading in that. And then we got through the process of that. We needed some funds to pay for that publishing. and the Lord supernaturally provided the funds for it. And so we just knew it was the Lord. He was taking care of it all the way around. Then came the time when I needed to have it edited, and through the hybrid publishing company, it was going to be kind of expensive. So I asked the Lord, and I thought, it would be great, Lord, if you could provide an editor, and if it could be a woman, because this is a book for women, and if she could be a believer, and if it would be cheaper, and if she was local. So kind of a lot of things. Well, 2 days later, I was in the local pizza parlor with my mom and the kids, and she was going to take the kids for the afternoon. So I'm wondering, gosh, what am I going to do for the afternoon? And there's a group of folks at this table. It was 3 ladies, and I heard them say author and book, and I thought, you know what? Maybe that's the local, authors club that meets there. So I felt like I should stop and ask, hey, do you happen to know any editors? So on the way out, I stopped and I said, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do you happen to know of any local editors? And a woman turns around and she says, well, I'm one. And I was like, of course you are, So her clients were actually just leaving. So we got to sit down. My mom took the kids. I happened to have the manuscript on a thumb drive in my bag. She happened to have her laptop. So we just worked things out right there and talked with her a bit. And it was everything that I had asked the Lord for. And I thought, Lord, you're so good to us. And so from there, that was it. And yeah, I mean, there's so many other stories involved in it of how the Lord led, but wow. So that's why I say it was fun. It was a fun process.
We're talking with Tina Wanamaker, author of the new book, Characteristics of a Christian Woman, a focus on the characteristics portrayed by a woman following after God. This is her second book. Her first one was called Characteristics of a Christian Woman. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask you to give me a comparison, because you lived as a non-Christian woman in a secular world, in a secular marriage, and came to faith and came face to face with, in some cases, the opposite, in other cases, the amplified of who God designed you to be and how He wanted to refine you. Because we probably think we know what the characteristics of a Christian woman are, but I would venture to say that 90% of the people that would tell you that they know that grew up in church and are looking at a model that was given to them based on Proverbs 31 without a whole lot wrapped around it. You actually went through the experience of not exhibiting the characteristics of a Christian woman. First of all, because you weren't one. Second of all, you weren't aware that there were things that you shouldn't be doing. You lived in a part of the country where pretty much anything goes. And it's legislated that pretty much everything goes. So there was no standard. Now you had a standard, and you had to begin to measure yourself against the standard. And it brought a great deal of revelation to you. When we come back from the break, I want to talk about that revelation and the differences that you were able to see so clearly in your own life that compelled you to share it because it had not been presented this way. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our 1-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're visiting with Tina Wanamaker, author of Characteristics of a Christian Woman, a focus on the characteristics portrayed by a woman following after God. You know, when I think about your journey, Tina, raised in a home where mom read the Bible but was not necessarily raising a Christian family environment. Grandmother that read the Bible but not necessarily creating that you grabbed a hold of it and grew up that way. You came to faith 1.5 years into your marriage. So there was a lifestyle that you were embracing, that you were living, that all of a sudden you came face to face with what you now understood to be as the truth. And in order for it to be the truth, it meant that what you had been doing was not the truth. So in your reconciliation of that, you became aware that there were certain characteristics that you thought were socially acceptable, or certain characteristics that were acceptable as a wife or a young woman, but you began to find through reading the Bible that these weren't necessarily reflective of God. When you think about, even in writing the first book, what were some of the revelations that you received that made you aware of, if I'm going to write about the characteristics, I have to know, because we're in a dual world. There's right and wrong, there's good and evil, there's qualities and there's non-qualities. When we're looking at what the characteristics of a Christian woman are, and your first book, characteristics of or this is your first book, in looking at these characteristics, what was stunning to you? What rocked your world a little bit?
Well, first of all, just a slight correction is that growing up in our home, we were raised with morality in a family that did love God. And so just to kind of correct that a little bit. But so being raised with lessons of morality, when I began to live that lifestyle that was not pleasing to the Lord and enter into the world, I always knew somewhere that it was wrong. And I think that that's that God-given conscience. So I minister down in the local jail, and so when I am in there teaching, I'll tell the ladies that, girls, you know that there's always a time that comes in the quiet place where you're done drinking for a time, where you know that what you're doing is wrong. And that's why you start drinking again, because what we try to do is we try to cover our sin on whatever level that is for us, is we're trying to cover what it is that we're doing. And you can cover in a lot of different ways. You can cover with drinking, you can cover with drugs, you can cover with relationships. But we know that the only true covering is Jesus Christ, that He's the one who covers us. So looking at the contrast between the two, I would say that living in the world and living as part of the world, you are incredibly self-focused. And I think that anyone who has been living in the world knows that. I mean, the focus is always on yourself. Even if you're trying to do good things, I think really the focus is still on yourself on some level. So that self-focus and the complaining attitude and the gossip and the nitpicking and is just really empty lifestyle of going out and doing these things apart from Christ. In my case, I was constantly looking to meet a need that only God could meet within me. And so I did that through, like I mentioned, the covering, right? The drinking and the drugs and relationships and different things. And that's the same thing my husband was doing as well. And so the contrast in that. And then once we got married, the things that I found, and those things were all acceptable in our circle, so to speak, of the world. They were all acceptable. Everyone else was doing them. And so it was fine. Then once we got married, what I felt was acceptable was criticizing my husband. I criticized him, and I was a feminist. I had somewhere along the way picked up feminism, which is not being feminine, right? There's two things here. So feminist, it's the idea that, you know what, I shouldn't have to serve you. Things should be 50-50, you do this and I'll do this. And if you do this for me, then maybe I'll do that for you. And that's the thinking of the world. And so coming to Christ, so that's on this side over here. And coming to Christ on the other side, realizing, God says in Psalm 51:6 that he desires truth in the innermost parts of us, in the innermost places of us. And so coming to Christ, we have to begin to be honest about that stuff and say, God, what do you say? Because now it doesn't feel right. Now we have the Holy Spirit governing us, and he says, you shouldn't be doing that. And then we're like, oh, wow, I need to be honest about what it is that I'm doing. And that requires humility. And saying, I've been criticizing my husband, or I've been doing this, or I've been doing that. And God, I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? And then will you teach me your ways? Will you teach me what you say to do? And so being over here, and I'll just focus on marriage, in the world, in a marriage relationship, fighting, self-seeking, it was a mess. It really was. And then coming to Christ over here, and then we learn, our motto in our home now is Philippians 2:3, esteem others higher than yourself. And so Owen and I are constantly serving each other in various levels because our position in the home is different. But we serve each other, we love each other. And, even this morning I was asking the Lord, would you show me today ways that I can love my husband? And so it's completely different. There's a different level of communication. It's like night and day.
When you did this study, and you turned this into a study, and this is a Bible study, because you do have end of chapter questions, and you take us on a journey. You make some statements. First of all, a Christian woman is loving.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I've been around for the 21 years of my faith journey, for the more than 15 years of preaching and teaching, and I would say that the older Christian women are loving.
Mm-hmm.
The 60, 70, and 80-year-old foundational, they're the ones that are the first with the casserole. They're the ones that... But I'm not sure that I've seen exhibited in the generations prior.
Mm-hmm.
Or the generations, let's say, after now, through the millennials.
Right.
The same type of a Christian woman is loving.
Mm-hmm.
3 women were approached about mentoring, and 3 women said no.
Mm-hmm.
I'm appalled at that, since it is the duty and responsibility of every believer to raise disciples, to create accountability, and that your husband experienced the same thing. You say a Christian woman is loving. Help me understand that, because I think that some grab a hold of it.
Mm-hmm.
But the in and out of 1 hour quick service at church, no more Wednesday night gatherings, small groups, is the Christian woman given the opportunity to be loving the way it used to be? And have we created a model within our Christian life where loving doesn't get to be demonstrated in the ways it used to be? So as you began to look at the characteristics of a Christian woman, you opened up with a statement from 1 John 4:7, "Beloved, let us love one another. We should show love in word, action, and attitude, But before this love can be shared with the world around us, it must be practically lived out in our homes.
Mm-hmm.
Are we award-winning, Academy Award-winning actors that when we set foot in the car to head to church, we thus become a loving family? But the chaos, the conflict of the prior week, your statement is a Christian woman is loving. That is not a conditional set of circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
It is a state of being.
Yes, it is.
And I think that you clearly demonstrate this. But to the woman out there that thinks she is loving, but it's not a state of being, it's not a 24/7. God created us, God is love.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come to the revelation that this is a state of being, not a state of acting?
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I think that the condition where a lot of women find themselves not loving may partially be due to the lack of Titus 2:4, where it talks about the older women mentoring and demonstrating to the younger women that they should love their husbands and love their children, and so on and so forth. And I think a lot of times we need to really, as women who are more mature in Christ, we have to share these things with other women on a practical level. Even to say, you know, I've been meeting with a young lady, a young mother, and just a sweet lady, and I was challenging her to speak words of life to her children because she hadn't learned how to do that yet. And she says, I don't even know what I was saying. And I said, well, describe your child to me. And so she described her child. And then I was able to say, okay, this is what it might look like. So giving that practical example to the women and saying, you know what? This is what it would look like to love. And this is what you would actually do. And so I think that Jesus, over and over, he gives example of behavior and attitude and words. And so that we also should give those examples to others. And learning that love, though, we learn that love at the feet of Jesus as we sit with God. And as we allow him to reveal that love to us, and we ask him to cultivate his heart within us towards others. You know, I mean, through the years, over and over, and I still ask him, God, give me your heart for people. Give me your heart of compassion. Give me your heart of love. And Owen and I, we've talked and hashed this out and prayed, and we really strongly feel that our desire is to love people back to life. That it comes down to love. It's all about loving folks, loving God first, loving my husband second, loving the children, and then after that.
It's interesting that a marriage that was a secular marriage, that a year and a half into it you come to faith, that you grabbed a hold of that cord of 3 strands, and you brought it into your marriage. It sounds like your marriage was a magnifying glass on your secular behavior that made it so that you not only realized if it could happen to you, it's probably happening to a whole lot of other people.
That's right.
And they have no handbook to guide them through it.
Yes.
They have no mirror in order. Certainly you have the Bible, but if you don't know the Bible, you don't know where to go in the Bible to find what you're looking for.
Right.
So oftentimes people will go through these experiences and come out with these 400-page books of intense radical change in behavior.
Sure.
And your approach in your book is quite a bit different. It is it's doable, it's workable, it's practical, it's a springboard.
Right.
Hopefully they'll read this and begin their own pursuit, which can become the 500-page volume of how they pass it on.
Yes. Lord.
Who did you write this book for, and who did you write it to?
I wrote it to women of any age, really. The book includes how to be a loving woman. It includes marriage. It includes children, Christian friendships. Why do we even have Christian friendships? And how do we be that good friends to others? It includes how to be gracious in offenses. And I think there's topics in here that we as Christian women don't touch on very often because they're sometimes uncomfortable. Sometimes it's hard for us to say, you know, I don't know how to speak words of life to my children. I don't know how to be good friends. And so the book is written to women of all ages, and Lord willing, it will be an encouragement to them to seek Him out. That's the total goal in it, is to have them look to the Lord. At one point in the book, I even say, you know, hey, if you haven't been speaking words of life to your children, put the book down and go do it.
Sounds so simple. It sounds.
I think it is.
It sounds practical. It sounds real. It sounds like something I can do.
Yes.
That if I'm not speaking, if my husband is walking in the door and I'm critical of him in my greeting, I need to make myself aware. And so your life experience became a mirror. And in that mirror, you saw a reflection of your old self. And in this book, Characteristics of a Christian Woman, you began to see an image of the self you wanted to become. And God put you on a path of pursuit to define what that is. And you had to come to the realization that at some point in time that Tina Wanamaker is every woman. That she's every mom, she's every wife, that she struggles with the same questions, the same challenges, but yet there are answers, and the answers are not hard.
No, they're not.
You reference the message that Jesus said to take His yoke. In the Hebrew, and in the time in which He's speaking this in Aramaic, in a Hebraic, Aramaic being the language of the Babylonians, but using the same alphabet as Hebrew, we understand what He's saying. Is He's talking about His teaching. He's saying, take my teaching upon you. My teaching's easy.
Yep.
The law, the Pharisees, that was heavy. My teaching's easy. Love your neighbor as yourself. Serve one another. Bless those who curse you. Forgive others. Fundamental things, but those are characteristics of not just a Christian woman, but those are characteristics of all believers.
Yes.
However, I will stand behind this statement that says that if you, the wife, you, the woman, begin to exhibit these characteristics, that it will be compelling to your husband. it will be that same picture that God gives us that says if you become a believer and your spouse does not, this is not a justification to leave them. In fact, you are encouraged to stay with them, for this change in them may be the very thing that brings them to faith.
Yes.
You live the reverse of that. Your husband came to faith,
Yeah.
and you followed behind because you must have seen something in him that was compelling. And that compelling change in him drove you to desire a compelling change in you. This is literarily raw. This isn't what we would put in the Pulitzer Prize category.
Right. Yeah.
It is on a level that says that I don't have to be an expert in the Bible to grab a hold of these concepts. And I said that not to be disparaging, but to be encouraging, to say that don't be deterred from getting a hold of this book through our website, ignitingnation.com, through Amazon, directly from Tina herself, because you think it's going to be above your ability to grasp. As a matter of fact, it is so foundational, so fundamental to launching a life that will take the basic characteristics and turn them into gifts, magnify them into an increase. Your children will now have a model, and we'll see that model replicated. And if you are exhibiting these characteristics, people will be drawn to you to say, there's something about you. I need help. Will you help me? And you've taken this, your personal journey, and you've taken us on the inside of it. And I want to thank you for that, because the transparency, the reality, and the essential characteristics of a Christian woman. These are things that people assume they know, and I can promise you they don't know them because they're not exhibiting them. And they're not even aware that they're not exhibiting them. This is not a book of condemnation. This is a book of transformation and for equipping a woman who has a desire to be more like the Messiah in act, in word, in life. Tina Wanamaker, thank you. Thank you for sharing with us characteristics of a Christian woman, a focus on the characteristics portrayed by a woman following after God. I encourage Bible studies, small groups to grab a hold of this. Go to our website, ignitingnation.com, click on Books and Media, order it right from there. You can get it on Amazon, Kindle, you can get it directly from Tina, and you can go to her YouTube channel called Words of Life for Women, where she gives real-world advice. And I think the most encouraging part of this is your youth. The most encouraging part is I'm not sitting across from someone my age, that you are the hope of the generation that's raising the children now that are the future, and that as moms struggle for their identity of wife, mother, friend, all those things that you went through, you'll help them define much more clearly who it is they want to be and how to be it. So I thank you for that, and we bless you and your ministry, and we hope to read and hear more about you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us here on Revealing the Truth. And that brings us to the end of our live broadcast day, but that does not bring us to the end of our day, for we are 24/7 every day of the week right here on ianbn.com, or you can watch us on Facebook all day long. You can go to our YouTube channel and watch over 300 interviews with fabulous people just like Tina Wanamaker that have a story to tell and a message to bring that you might not hear anywhere else. We encourage you to visit our teaching archives. Now over 900 hours of recorded teaching available to you for just the small subscription price of $5 a month. We hope that you'll follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, Igniting a Nation, and join well over 350,000 others that continue to follow us and grow with us as we continue to bring you the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. So until we see you right back here at ianbn.com, ignitinganation.com, at 9 o'clock Central Time, when we begin our broadcast day, we bid you shalom.